Well, I recently heard a story from the New York Times columnist David Brooks. Maybe you've heard of him before. Told a story about Dwight Eisenhower when he says he was 3 years old. This 3 years old seems to be a little bit young for this story, but this is how Eisenhower relays it, so I'm just going to relay it that way. When he was 3 years old, he wanted to go trick-or-treating, but his mom would not let him go trick-or-treating because he was 3 years old. And I don't think it was quite the way it is today. Today, parents go with their kids, but at that time, they just sent them. And 3 years old, a little young to go trick-or-treating, and that. Well, he didn't like that answer very much. And so he became very angry. In fact, he says that he had a terrible temper. And so what he did was he went outside and he started to punch a tree. I'm not sure what he thought he was accomplishing there, but says he started to punch a tree. He was so mad, punched the tree so much that he wore the skin off his hands, and his hands became bloodied. That's how mad he was. So his mom saw it, sent him up to his room, and let him sit up there for about an hour, and then she went up to bandage his wounds. And when she was up there working on his hands, she quoted to him the words of Proverbs 16:32. He that conquereth his own soul is greater than he who taketh a city. And as he was talking about it 76 years later, so he would have been 79 years old, as he was talking about it, he said, that was the most important moment of my life. It's pretty profound when you think about it. He said, the thing that I realized was that if I wanted to be the kind of man that I really wanted to be, then I was going to have to wrestle with a lot of things that were happening inside of me. That I couldn't blame everything else, all of the outward circumstances of my life, but I was going to have to wrestle with those things that were working inside of me. And for him, it was his temper. It's a very profound thing when you think about it. But we live in a society where it seems like we blame all of the problems in our life on circumstances outside of ourselves. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some things in the world that need to be fixed, that don't, sort of impinge on us. But the Bible tells us, and I think we learn from experience as well, that more often than not, when we handle things poorly in this world, it's often because we cannot get a handle of our emotions. And so starting next week, we're actually going to be starting a series that we're calling Sweet Emotions. And we're going to deal with things like fear and anger and loneliness and even joy. Some of these things that have a tendency to trip us up. When we blame things outside, a lot of times we find that actually the problem is inside. And so we're going to talk about what the Bible says about dealing with those emotions. So that's next week. I'd love to invite you back again to start looking at those things. On a related note, today, as I listen to people and as I look around and I see the patterns of our lives, it seems to me that there is one particular emotion that seems to be in epidemic proportions today, and that's the emotion of boredom. Now, maybe you've never thought about boredom as an emotion, but psychologists actually call it an emotion. And I'm not talking about the kind of boredom that you're experiencing right now when you're forced to sit down and listen to a lecture from a guy that you may not even know. But I'm talking about this sort of deep existential sort of boredom. And I know a lot of you just said, see, that's why I'm bored, is because you're using words like existential. And so anyway, but let me explain to you what I'm saying here, okay? We live in one of the most prosperous societies in history. Our standard of living is really high. Even the people who live at the lowest standard in our society can usually at least have something to eat. We don't have people in this culture that are starving. We have people who are hungry. Okay, we live at a very high level. We have a lot of leisure time. We're well fed. We're cared for. And even though we might complain about things like health care or high insurance costs, we still have some of the best health care that has ever happened in the history of the world. Our life expectancy is getting longer, and so much about our life is so good. We live more comfortably than just about any other time in history. And yet it seems like, as a society, we are plagued by this serious sense, this nagging sense of dissatisfaction. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that everyone is miserable all the time. In fact, I think most people would probably say, well, actually, my life is pretty good. It's not perfect. There are some things that could be better, but for the most part, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm doing the best I can. And yet, oftentimes in those moments where we can't find other things to distract us, we sit down and we think about the fact that we just feel like there's something that is missing. And then it starts to have an effect on the way we live our lives. And I think probably you'll recognize it somewhat, at least, in Brian's story. Go ahead and watch.
It's an honor for me to share my story with you this morning. You see, sharing my story on a Sunday is pretty remarkable for me, because not that many years ago, Sundays weren't any different than any other day of the week for me. Going to church wasn't something that I did on a regular basis. Now, I did believe in God, in prayer. That's as far as my faith was, though. And honestly, at that time, it felt like life was pretty good. We being my wife, Shelley, and I, had what we wanted, felt like we were doing the right thing in our eyes. But whenever challenges came to us, whenever we had to deal with life struggles, we didn't seem to get through them very well. The stresses of life would really put pressure on our marriage. We seemed to get caught up in a circle of having the same old arguments every month, every couple months, whatever it was. The same things kept coming up. And we thought we could fix it on our own. We thought we could just do better, and we couldn't. There was one time when we were sitting in our bedroom having an argument about the piddly things that seemed to just kind of kept digging at us. And we got to a point where we were kind of like, enough. We've had enough of this. Both of us had enough. Shelley and I were sitting there, and it was really a hard moment for us. We were kind of at a point of, are we going to really do this? Are we going to make our marriage work, or are we not? And thankfully at that time, we both knew that we wanted to make it work. And we'd been together for many, many years, and we wanted it. We wanted it to work, but we didn't know how. And after much discussion, we realized we needed something more than just us, just the two of us, to actually make this work and get through it.
Well, as I listen to Brian's story, I just have this hunch. I have this feeling that he's not alone, that he's not the only one who feels this way. And maybe your boredom doesn't come in the form of a marriage that is really struggling. It might be that work is not very fulfilling for you. It might be that sense that you're doing a lot of running around and you're very busy, but it all seems to be for nothing. And I don't know exactly how it manifests itself in your life, but I have a sneaking suspicion that there are a number of us here in this room where when I talk about this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I think boredom is a pretty good word for it, because and so many people are experiencing it today. And just like there are a number of ways that it can manifest itself, there are also a number of ways that we try to deal with it in our lives as well. For instance, one way that we try to deal with this boredom is through distraction. We try to distract ourselves from it. A recent study showed that Americans spend an average of 10 hours and 39 minutes per day on media. Think about that, 10 hours and 39, that's like, 40% of the day on media, and then another probably, 30% on sleep, I don't know. And then the thing that was really amazing to me is that 75% of this time was simply watching cat videos on the internet. So, no, actually, I just made that up. This media, it includes time on tablets, smartphones, computers, video games, radios, DVDs, DVRs, TVs. It includes pretty much everything. Now, think about it for a minute, okay? Think about your family and think about how much you use it. And my guess is you're actually not going to be very surprised about this statistic. I think about my house and I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. And it's really amazing. But why do we do that? Why do we do it? Well, I think it's because what's the alternative? It's sitting around and being bored. I mean, that's kind of how a lot of us look at it. And so we use all of this stuff in order to distract ourselves from our lives. But the problem is that not only does it work, it actually is harmful. I mentioned a while back a book by another author named Nicholas Carr called The Shallows. And the subtitle of the book is What the Internet is Doing to Our Brain. And I don't have time to go into it today, but I just want to tell you, it's not good. All right, read the book sometime. A lot of Dave and Emma and Ellie and some of you have read the book there as well. But anyway, we distract ourselves with a lot of media because there are a lot of things in life that are important that we don't really want to think about. And there are other ways we distract ourselves. Sometimes we distract ourselves by nice things. We want possessions. There's some kind of a rush that it gives us when we own new things. It's always exciting to have the newest and the best and these gadgets, and at least to have it better than what your neighbor has. That's really good. In fact, doctors are prescribing something that they call retail therapy now. Okay, and you can just guess what that means. I know that there are a number of ailments that we found out are actually invented by pharmaceutical companies. I think this one was one that was invented by credit card companies. But basically what they say is if you're feeling down or if you're starting to feel depressed, they will prescribe going to the mall and doing some shopping and buying some things, because when you do that, you get a shot of serotonin to your brain and it makes you feel better. Okay? Now, I don't think it's really that hard to figure out that this is probably not a great solution if you're feeling down. Great solution for the credit card companies, probably not very good solution for your budget. Okay? But it distracts us, and this is how we deal with our boredom. Now, another way, or a new way that at least our society tells us to deal with boredom is through thrill seeking. Okay, so if we look at the example of marriage, for instance, okay, let's say you have this routine marriage and you just need to inject some life into it. What they'll say is if your marriage is boring, then you need to add some spice to it, right? Go on an exotic vacation or get some sexy lingerie or try some experimentation. In fact, I've even seen a growing number of articles that are suggesting that we should dispense with the idea of monogamy. All right? And that way, everybody will be much more fulfilled in marriage and all of that. And I just always think, yeah, that'll work, right? And so, there's always this idea that if you make things more exciting, if you start to ramp up the intensity of things, then the boredom will start to go away. And movies tell us that we can't have a happy life unless you throw caution to the wind and you throw off the weight of social convention and you start to take huge risks. That if you just live your life and put one foot in front of the other, then you're just wasting your life. Okay, these are the kinds of ways that our media tells us to deal with these things. Now the problem is that, well, actually, most of us are really not all that exciting, right? But, we're not really thrill seekers, and probably the reason is because we're kind of boring. Most of us are that way. I guess we have to just kind of learn to live with it. How many people want to skydive anyway? Is that appealing to some people? All right, a few, but not most. All right? And so we have this issue. We have this issue where we're bored with life, and the solutions that our society promises will work are actually ineffective. And the reason they're ineffective is because they only address the symptoms and not the real issue. Ultimately, boredom is not the lack of thrills. It's not the lack of good feelings. Boredom is the lack of meaning in life. And that's why you can do things that are incredibly fun, that are crazy, that are thrilling, and they won't be fulfilling. In fact, one thing that we know about thrills is that the more you do them, the more thrilling the next thing has to be in order for it to have the same effect. And so there's this law of diminishing returns, and we know that it can't do it. And that's why the solution to boredom isn't distraction or thrill seeking, it's living a life of meaning. Now, this is an area where a lot of people pick up on it. They've tried the other ways. They've tried thrill-seeking. They've tried distracting themselves, and they get tired of that. They're tired of those other routes, and so they set out on a quest for meaning. And I think this has a lot to do with a lot of the activism and all of the political engagement that we have today. People want to make a difference in the world. They want to make the world a better place, and so they start to get involved and they start to do things that they think will make the world a better place. And I want to show you another story. It's actually a story and song of another guy who wanted to make the world a better place. kind of fun to make fun of slacktivism, isn't it? Well, the thing about it is, though, is there's something behind even all of that that there's an impulse there that people want to make a difference, that there's something about it that they want their lives to matter. They want their lives to count for that, and that's a great thing. And in fact, our society has done some really good things as a result of people wanting to get involved, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that they want their lives to matter for something. And I'm glad for that, and I'm glad that Christians are at the forefront of a lot of those causes. But actually, even this can be problematic. For one, you can work for many, many years and never feel like you've made any progress. And there are many people who will join the Peace Corps or go into politics or join a humanitarian organization in hopes of making a difference, but they look back over the body of their work over time, and I've read some articles and books by people that do that, and they get discouraged because they don't seem to be making a dent in their particular area, and what do? They end up giving up. And maybe even more significantly, a lot of times people will step back and and they look at the big picture and they realize that one day all of this is going to be gone anyway. You know, maybe climate change will accelerate, and overpopulation and overconsumption will be too much to overcome, and the human race will go the way of the dinosaur. Okay? In fact, I heard someone say that that's going to happen in about 100 years. Now, and I know that some of you are thinking, well, you're being really overly dramatic here, and maybe I am. In fact, I don't think probably that's going to happen in my lifetime. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. But have you heard in our society the big push about populating Mars, for instance? There have been, or not even Mars, just other places. The movies like Interstellar is one. The world is being destroyed, and so we have to go find somewhere else to live. The Martian, National Geographic made a mini-series that was actually very fascinating about colonizing Mars. And why are they making all of these movies? Well, it's because they believe this is all going to end soon. And this isn't religious people saying it, it's scientists. Like they should put sandwich boards on and say the end is near, right? I mean, that's kind of the way our society believes that things are going. And whether you believe that or not, it points to something that is very real, that this is all going to end sometime for all of us. And even if all this catastrophic stuff doesn't happen in our lifetime, you are not going to live forever. By the way, my son told me yesterday that the oldest person in the world died yesterday. She was 117, which means that she was the last person who was alive in the 1800s, which kind of makes me think, boy, I'm glad I wasn't born in the 1800s. That was kind of a bad century. Nobody made it out alive. But the thing is that someday we are all going to be in that place. Okay? And what we have to wrestle with is, what difference did my life make? What difference does it make if I live a good life and help people, or if I live selfishly and just go for all of my own comfort? What difference does it make? What difference does it make if I exploit people or if I save lives? Like the writer of Ecclesiastes wrote, when you look at it that way, when you look at things under the sun, everything is meaningless. So thanks for coming. You're dismissed. Right? Now, you know there's more to it, but I know that there are probably some of you who are asking the question, two questions maybe. Why is he being so morbid, number one? But number two, I thought it was Easter. Aren't you supposed to at least say something nice about Jesus and say something about Jesus rising from the dead and all of that kind of stuff? And you're absolutely right, and so here we go. Now, the reason that I wanted to talk about all this today, to set it up this way, is because people often don't realize that what we talk about on Easter and hopefully other times throughout the year, this strange belief called the resurrection of Jesus Christ, is not just a religious thing, but it matters to our lives, whether you're religious or not. It's not just some strange tale that will make us more religious. And many people, maybe even you, say, well, count me out. I don't need to become more religious. Okay? I'm fine, thank you. But what I want you to see today is that the resurrection of Jesus is not a religious thing. See, before the message today, we read a passage from the Bible. It was from the letter written to the church in the city of Corinth, 1 Corinthians. It was written by the Apostle Paul. Corinth was a city in modern-day Greece, and many of them in the church, so these were people who were believers, many of them in the church didn't believe that there was any such thing as resurrection, as anything beyond this life. They said that when you die, you're just dead. And the Apostle Paul answers them. And his answer for them is that in order for this life to make any sense, there has to be something beyond it. In order for us to believe that there's any chance of justice in the world, if we have any hope, in order for us the world to have any ultimate meaning, there has to be something that exists beyond this life. This is Paul's argument. And this is how he says it starting in verse 13. If the dead are not raised, in other words, if that's not the kind of thing that happens, if nobody ever lives again, then Christ has not been raised either. And if Christ has not been raised, your faith is futile and you're still in your sins. Then even those also who have fallen asleep in Christ are lost. If it's only for this life we have hope in Christ, then we are of all people most to be pitied. Okay? And here's what he's saying. What he's saying is that if you focus your attention, if you focus your hope on making this life better or more comfortable, then we should all feel hopeless. Because you will never fulfill if the substance of your life is a constant state of distraction from the important things in life. If your ultimate hope is that one day you'll get the house on the lake, or that you'll become the CEO, or you'll have the love of your life, then you will never have ultimate satisfaction, because even if you achieve those things, you will always be afraid that in the end you will lose them. And even if you focus on making this world a better place for other people, as good and as noble as that is, if it's your ultimate goal, then deep down you have to know that someday everything good you ever did will be washed away. But if your ultimate hope is in something eternal that can never be taken away, then you'll be able to hold everything else in life with a loose hand. And that's what Jesus means when he says in the book of Matthew, he says, seek first the kingdom of heaven, seek it first, and these other things will be added. And if you do have some of those things, you won't live in fear that they'll be taken away because you don't need them in order to be happy. Because your fulfillment doesn't come from that. You don't have to fight and claw to get them because you will already be content. Well, we didn't show you the rest of Brian's story. But when Brian committed to Jesus, I want him to tell you the lesson that he learned. Watch.
We came to the conclusion that that good enough life that we were living just wasn't good enough anymore. We needed something more. And we made that decision together that we're going to do this. Let's give this a try. Let's really go at this and let's really seek out God and see what that does for us. Because where we were at, it seemed all right at the time, but little did we know how it wasn't all right. There was so much more for us. So after discussions and many times being stuck in that same circle of thinking life was good, going back and forth on how things weren't good, we came to the conclusion that taking some intentionality in our faith was going to be the path that we were going to take. And so together we decided, let's really do this. Let's go to church and make something happen with this. We came to Waite Park Church and immediately felt comfortable with that. And so it was a good fit for us, kind of being out of the loop for many years and needing something more. It was nice to have a very welcoming atmosphere. I spent a lot of time reading the Gospels and the New Testament, and that really helped me have a greater understanding for who Jesus was and what he actually did for me and for my family and everyone. And by spending time doing that, it helped me a great deal. It added many different things to my life that I didn't think I was missing, and that it would make things better for me. I've gained some really great friendships, some deep, meaningful friendships, and people that hold me accountable to walking the way that Jesus wants me to walk. The difference that it's made for me, it really feels good. And you could ask my wife, Shelley, it's made a difference in our life as well. it's really kind of overwhelming at times at how different things for us are right now than they were just a few short years ago. I know that with the grace of God and Jesus' sacrifice, I'm strengthened and encouraged to keep moving forward and keep making myself the person that He wants me to be, the man of God that I can be proud of with my wife and for my sons. It's really remarkable, and I'm very humbled by it at times, and just thankful that we made that decision, a few years ago, that where we were at wasn't where we were supposed to be. It's not where God wanted us to be, and the meaning in our life wasn't going to get us where we wanted to go. And now what we have is we have meaning, we have purpose. I'd just like to thank everyone that's helped me along the way and us along the way to get to this point of a more purposeful, intentional meaning of life.
People sometimes get the idea that faith works this way, that you get your life straight, you start to get things together, you learn to stop sinning, you do things right, then God will accept you, and then you'll get a sense of peace and purpose in your life. But when you understand the story of Jesus in the way that the Bible tells it, you understand that this is exactly backwards. Because what the Bible tells us, and this is the same thing that we heard from Brian there, they felt like their marriage was floundering, and something told them that they needed to start with God, that they just needed to go to Him. And when they started and they put their faith there, then they realized that they could let go of all of the things that they were chasing after. What he said was that for them, the thing that was destroying their marriage was this idea that they had to keep up with their neighbors financially and with possessions and things like that. And when they came to Jesus, when they started to live for something that was permanent rather than temporary, that was eternal rather than temporal, they were able to let go of those things that were causing them friction in their marriage. And so it was this focus on what is eternal that then allowed them, that kind of worked its way back into their life and allowed them to be able to live the kind of life that was more fulfilling and more meaningful. Now, I know that there are a lot of people who would say, well, what does this have to do with the resurrection? Why? And in fact, maybe you're asking this question, well, why should I even believe it? I mean, should we just make up this thing about eternal life so we can all feel better and we can live a different way? Well, that's the thing that I want to talk to you about today, is that there is a way that you can know, there is a way that is evidence that it's actually true, and that is what we call the resurrection of Jesus Christ. You see, the way the Bible talks about the resurrection of Jesus is that it's not just a cool magic trick. It's not just something neat that God did for us, but it actually is proof that what Jesus said is true. It's actually proof. In fact, a little bit later in 1 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul writes, if Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith. In other words, for Paul, this is the proof that everything that Jesus said and taught and did before that is actually true. He calls Jesus' resurrected body the first fruits. For us, it might be more like this, what we call a prototype. In other words, Jesus' resurrected body is what our body will look like when we get to the final resurrection. And if it's true, it changes how we live now. If it's true, it allows us to let go of the things that we rely on to make us happy. If it's true, it gives us strength to love our enemies and to pray for those who persecute us. If it's true, it allows us to turn the other cheek because pride and reputation don't mean anything to us. If it's true, that means that life is not a waste and we don't have to rely on this life to get what we want. If it's true, then we don't have to be ashamed of our past because we know that God forgives us when we come to Him. If it's true, we know that you don't always have to have your way in your marriage. If it's true, then you can spend less time trying to build up your reputation, your comfort, your nest egg, or save the world. If it's true, you can enjoy what comes to you rather than being owned by it. If it's true, the same power that rose Jesus from the dead is now at work in your mortal bodies. And if it's true, then one day, each one of us, God is going to wake us up, and we're going to stand before Him, and we're going to have to give an account of our lives. And what will matter to Him is not those things that we did to distract our lives, to distract us from our lives, from ourselves, he will wonder, what did we do that really mattered? Did we chase after those things that were eternal and would last forever, or did we chase after temporary things? And so in the moments left today, this is the thing that I'd like for all of us to consider. If you want, you can bow your heads and pray, meditate, whatever. But I want to first ask those of you, maybe who would say, I'm already committed, I'm already a believer, and just ask you the question, okay? What is it that you're living for? Because I know that there are a lot of people who say, yeah, I believe in all of that stuff, I believe in resurrection, I believe in all of that, but it doesn't necessarily impact how you live on a day-to-day basis. And I wonder if there are some of you who would say, you know what, I need to reorient. I need to start to let go of some of those things that are temporary, and maybe I need to start to live for what's eternal. Maybe I need to look to the resurrection more and find my peace and my hope and my comfort in that, and allow these things that I've made such a big deal of in this life just to melt away so that I can become the kind of person that God wants me to be. And maybe there are some of you in the room today who would say, you know, I've never really thought about committing myself to Jesus. Maybe you have been religious, maybe you grew up but didn't really think much of it. Maybe you know, it's just kind of a weird thing for you to be in church today, and that's okay. It's weird for a lot of people. Okay? But maybe something that we said, maybe something that the Apostle Paul said, maybe something that Brian said just hit you today, and you started to realize, you know, I am living for something that is not going to last. And I want to acknowledge today that it's just not very fulfilling for me, and I need something more. And if that's you, I would love for you to take the next step. Is to say, you know what, I'm going to give this a try. I'm just going to see if there's something to this Jesus thing. I'm going to check into it. And here's the great thing about it is it's not just a philosophy. It's not just something that's something made up. The claim is that it was an actual historic event that makes a difference in our lives today. And so you can check it out. Okay? In fact, the gift bags that we have for you today, if you're a guest with us, has a book in it called The Case for Easter. It has some of the evidence surrounding the resurrection. And you can take a look at it. And more than anything, I would love to have the opportunity to talk with you about it. And I'm not going to pressure you or anything, but I'd love to be there to be able to answer any questions that you have, to help you to be able to sort through this and figure out what's happening in your life and how Jesus can make a difference in it. And I'd love to get the opportunity to pray for you. Let's all bow our heads. And I just want to pray today. And I wonder if there are any of you who would say, this is something that I really need to get a handle on. I would just really love to have peace and fulfillment. I'd love to know that my eternity is set so I can live better now. Is there anyone here, just maybe show by raising your hand, that you would say, you know what, I need something different. I need to do something different. Anyone? Yeah, thank you. Let me pray for you. Lord, I thank you for this time, and I thank you for the fact that you did not just say that you loved us. You didn't just say that we are forgiven. You didn't just say that we can have meaning and purpose in life, that our life can matter, not just in this life, but even beyond that. God, I pray that today, on this Easter day, that you would allow the resurrection to work its way into our soul. Lord, that we would understand it not just to be a religious thing that causes us to come to church on Easter, but something that impacts our life on a day-to-day basis, that we have peace, that we have comfort, that we have meaning in life, that gets us beyond the boredom that we feel, that so much of our society feels. God, help us to search for it, not in distraction, not in thrills, not in even trying to make the world a better place, but let us find it in you and you alone. And so, God, I pray for anyone here today, if they've never made that decision, or if they're just struggling with it and just saying, I don't know what this means for me, God, I pray that you would become very real to them today, and that you would speak to them, answer the questions that they have. And God, that you would just let us know, that you would continually reassure us that someday because you rose, that we will also rise. And let that give us hope for this life and for the next. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Why don't you stand with us and let's close today with a song.